Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. To work with Karen is already a punishment, but in our first story, the OP was faced with a real pain in the butt who misused her authority, which resulted in her getting what she deserved in the end. You'll be surprised she wasn't fired for clearly being too dumb to function. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Just do what I say? Sure will. During university, I used to work a lot of odd jobs to help pay for tuition. One job I had was to be an assistant for a faculty member that was a typical Karen. The job was supposed to be only admin tasks related to schoolwork, but I helped her with other tasks to pad my hours, such as help her move things to and from a storage locker, helping buy and move furniture and the such. Everything had to be done her way or else I'd have to go back and redo it. At the end of the week, I would draft an email about the tasks I did and send it to the work-study program, CC Karen, and get her to sign off on what I did. I don't think anyone read the body of the email or even cared as long as Karen signed off on how many hours I worked I got paid. 10 days before my contract ended, Karen buys a brand new car right off the lot. This car had keyless entry and remote start. 7 years ago, this was uncommon and not many people around campus had it. During the last 5 days of my contract, Karen decided that she was going to get the most out of my labor. I stacked up at least 20 hours of work during finals. This was great for the cash, but not so great for studying. Most of the tasks she had me do were for her new car. I'm decently mechanically inclined and enjoy working on cars and motorcycles. Karen knew this and would have me do things for her new car, like installing a spoiler she bought off eBay, putting fender flares on, etc. The last day I was scheduled to work for her was devoted to working on this car. The last task she had for me was to install a spare hide key box underneath her car and put a spare key in it, in a keyless entry car. I explained to her many times that by putting the car's key fob on the car would mean that anyone can open it and drive it. She was furious that I fought her on installing the hide key and argued with me in the school's parking lot for about an hour. She argued that if she forgot her key, she'd be stranded and that she always had a spare key on all of her cars. I was adamant about not installing it until she threatened to not sign off on my hours and to just do what I say. Sure, I installed the key box and put her spare in it, got her to sign off on my last email, and was very explicit with installing the key box, even saying in the email that I was against it, had concerns about the car, and felt that I had to install it or she would not sign off on my hours. No fuss, no muss. I get paid the next day and complete the exit packet. I leave for break, and when I come back, the work-study program director calls me for a sit-down to talk about my work with Karen. Sure enough, her car was stolen only a week after break, and I was being asked if I had anything to do with it. I told them to pull up my emails that I sent with my weekly reports, and in the last one, it had my report on installing the key box and how against it I was. Luckily, I was back home for the break with family, working as a server for a pizza joint, and was nowhere near my university. Unlucky for Karen, she never mentioned in the police report that she'd put the keyless fob on the outside of her car. After graduating 3 years later, I found out from some peers that she was never able to recover her car. This is the equivalent of putting a welcome car thief mat out in front of your car door. Good on you for keeping records of your conversation so you could explain the scenario. And our second story. We're already getting fired, lady. So I'm in retail, a big box store. Recently, my store was selected for closing. As such, there were some changes. No layaways was one of these changes. All contracts would be honored, but we could no longer start new ones. Just a couple days ago, the store got their permit to use the words "store closing" and "all sales are final" in ads and posters. Of course, we all know how challenged customers can be bothered to read. Before I started working or reading this sub, I didn't know how ignorant of surroundings customers could be. With the all sales are final approach, our systems got an update to no longer allow the refund option. It's not just policy, it's literally not in our systems anymore. Receipts don't even print with barcodes anymore. For layaway, though, we're allowed to take individual items off or cancel the contract and do refunds. However, and we warn customers now, each and every time, we cannot do refunds for layaway after we process your final payment. Enter Lady from Hell. She seemed mild-mannered at first. I was working layaway today, and as such, I was the one to bear the brunt later. But as we pulled up her info, I told her what is described in my post, no refunds after I process payment. So if that's what you want, a lot of people have been canceling layaways lately to get the stuff at the liquidation prices, but that's another story. We have to do that now. She says no. I reiterate because she'd said something about wanting the lower prices that we have to do that before she pays. She huffs at me and tells me she has places to be, etc. No time for this, basically. I get that. It's that season, by all means. I process her payment and retrieve her items. As I'm stamping her receipt, all sales are final, she asks me to put it on top so she won't lose it when she goes to customer service and refunds her items. Loose conversation follows. Me is me, AL is angry lady. Ma'am, there are no refunds. I told you this before I put your payment through. This is effing ridiculous. I bought these before you were closing. Yes, ma'am, but the payment was after. I told you if you want to return it, I needed to do it before you paid. I even asked a second time. I don't effing care. I want the lower prices. Give me my money back. By this point, I'm just exhausted. It's Saturday, first weekend of the month, closing store stress, and I'm just a retail worker making a quarter more than minimum wage. Me. Ma'am, I told you twice we can't do refunds. Our system will just not allow it, period. AL. Get me a manager now. She starts storming off towards customer service, almost foaming at the mouth. Maybe a bit of creative license on my part, but oh well. I call up to the desk to let them know that an angry tornado is coming their way, and they let the manager know over the radios. It's going to be like a train wreck, so of course I have to follow to go watch. My manager isn't the type to throw people under the bus and isn't staying with the company either, so she's been pretty awesome, especially in this trying time of a store closing. Back to the customer. She's yelling her head off at the desk, demanding her money back. Service desk lady simply tries to get a word in that there's nothing we can do. I wish I could give a better description, but there's just no recounting the vitriol this woman is spouting off. Manager comes up and stays beside me. She gets some overflow, but I'm getting most of the heat in terms of F-bombs dropped. When AL finally runs out of breath, an impressive amount by the way, kudos to you lady, manager just says, sorry, we can't do refunds. Adventure Hunter told you 2 times of when we could do refunds. It's just out of our hands now. You'd think she'd insulted AL's dead mother's soul or something. New hate just comes out. The kicker? It was $100 in the layaway contract at most. And you were warned, lady, OMG. So we get to the part where this lady is promising to get us fired, the ground of the store salted, ancestors purged from existence, yada yada yada. Finally, a fellow associate speaks up. A sweet lady who's held her job longer than I've been alive just yells, "We're already getting fired in a month or so. Get the hell out." Manager tells the lady that security has called the police and to just leave before they get here. Storms out with her shopping cart. I get an extra 15 for my break and go watch college football. Thank God I have the next 2 days off. Crazies everywhere, SMH. I wouldn't have warned the lady about the police coming, so I could see her face as they show up and escort her out. And our last story. Entitled restaurant owners, entire staff quits. So this happened to me about 7 months ago when I was first working as a server. I'd had some experience before I started working there, but mainly everything I knew was from my old restaurant where I hosted. We had a new, hot, upcoming restaurant open in the middle of my town. I was the first to be interviewed, and the owners and head server all loved me. I was immediately hired and unofficially labeled as a manager under current head server. I'd help make the schedules and train staff, as when we first opened, we ran through a lot of people. The owner's wife ran things, and they liked to say they owned 30-plus restaurants. He was only an investor. They never ran one before. The owner's wife was so entitled and rude, she thought she knew everything about my town as she'd visited 4 or 5 times prior. Her menu was priced quite a bit higher than it should have been for the amount of items received. She'd change the menu items in the middle of service on us. She'd demand I make the schedule, then tell me to fire people, which she knew I didn't feel comfortable doing as I wasn't an official title manager. If any server had one bad night, she immediately hated you and pushed you off the schedule. She tried to tell me and the HS multiple times we were lucky she hired us. More like hell. From the moment we opened to when I left, every single person I'd worked with left. She refused to listen to guest requests or needs. I'd have guests leave because on a Wednesday night, she'd blast club-style music at a place that boasts a high-class style for a reasonable price. I got so tired of being treated like crap, I kept searching for a new job. When I did find one, I decided to do both to be safe in case the new one wasn't a fit either. She immediately tried to tell me she wanted to make me an official manager, and I politely declined as I needed to make tips. And her manager wage was crap. So she immediately pushed me out of the schedule. I showed up regardless to work on the day she promised me I would have that week before she changed her mind on me. On my last shift, I'd written a list as when we trained, we never got paid for it or got paid back for getting safe serve certificates that she demanded we have and promised to pay back. On top of before we opened, I helped set up the restaurant. We had a screaming match where I called her an entitled C-word. We had a hurricane last year and she refused to close until the plaza forced her to. I blew up and demanded my money or I'd call the cops and report her to the Better Business Bureau. I got my money the next day. It's been sitting with me for a very long time as I hate this woman with every fiber of my being. I get so much satisfaction when I see her constantly posting on Indeed, searching for people to work for her. Me and ex-staff warned everyone to stay away from them. Reminds me of Amy's Baking Company on Kitchen Nightmares. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.